The Placeholder Cousin. Chapter 1. Parker Donahue was the kind of person who alphabetized his cereal boxes. Not because he was particularly organized, but because it drove his roommate absolutely insane. This passive-aggressive streak was something he'd perfected over 32 years of being the other cousin in the illustrious Donahue family of Austin, Texas. "Why am I even going to this thing?" Parker muttered, stuffing a wrinkled dress shirt into his carry-on bag. His flight to Phoenix left in 3 hours, and he was moving with the enthusiasm of someone heading to a tax audit. "Because," his roommate Terry replied, lounging in the doorway of Parker's bedroom, "you promised your mom. And because deep down, you still think this time will be different." Parker glared at him. "I do not." "Sure, buddy. And I'm just rearranging your cereal boxes because I love chaos." The thing in question was Cousin Peyton's wedding. Peyton, the golden child of the Donahue family, whose life had been one long highlight reel of achievements carefully curated for maximum Facebook engagement. Peyton, who once accidentally pushed Parker into a swimming pool at his own birthday party because he was stealing focus. Parker's phone buzzed with a text from his mother, "Don't forget your blue tie. And please try not to antagonize Peyton this weekend." He showed the message to Terry. "See? I'm already being blamed for conflicts that haven't even happened yet. I'm quantum-level disappointing." Terry snatched the phone and typed a reply, "I'll be on my best behavior if Aunt Linda keeps her comments about my career to herself." "Don't send that." Parker lunged for the phone, but Terry danced away. "Too late. Living vicariously through your family drama is the only entertainment I can afford." Parker groaned as he checked his bank balance. Freelance graphic design paid the bills, mostly, but the $700 plane ticket to Phoenix had been a gut punch. Not to mention the group gift his aunt had strong-armed him into contributing to, which apparently needed to be at least $200 to be meaningful. Parker. But here he was, packing anyway, because some part of him still cared what these people thought. Or maybe because his therapist had suggested that running away doesn't heal the wound. At $150 per session, Parker figured he should at least try to get his money's worth. His phone buzzed again. His mother's reply was predictably swift, "Parker James Donahue. This weekend is not about you." "When is it ever?" he muttered, zipping his bag with unnecessary force. Chapter 2. The Phoenician Resort in Scottsdale, Arizona, was exactly the kind of place that made Parker feel like he should check his credit score before touching anything. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, and the lobby floor was made of marble so polished he could see his reflection. "Welcome to the Phoenician," chirped a concierge with a smile so bright it belonged in a toothpaste commercial. "Are you here for the Donahue-Prescott wedding?" Reluctantly, Parker replied, immediately regretting his honesty when her smile flickered. "I mean, yes. Yes, I am. Parker Donahue." She tapped away at her tablet. "Ah, Mr. Donahue. Let me see, oh." That little O contained multitudes. "Is there a problem?" "Not at all." Her voice went up an octave. "You're in the mountain casita section. That sounds fancy?" Parker offered hopefully. "It's our annex building. Across the parking lot. By the service entrance." Parker nodded slowly. "Of course it is. The main family is staying in our presidential suites," she continued, helpfully twisting the knife. "But your room has a lovely view of the staff break area." Parker forced a smile that wouldn't have fooled a toddler. "Perfect. I've always been fascinated by employee smoking habits." After receiving his key card, which, unlike the shiny gold ones he'd spotted earlier, was a dull gray, Parker trudged across the sun-baked parking lot, rolling his suitcase behind him like a reluctant pet. The mountain casita turned out to be a glorified motel with fake adobe siding and a sad cactus in a pot by each door. His room smelled vaguely of chlorine and broken dreams. Parker tossed his bag onto the bed and checked his phone. A message from the Donahue wedding party group chat he'd been added to against his will. "Welcome dinner at 7 p.m. in the Canyon Ballroom. Cocktail attire. Can't wait to see everyone. Aunt Linda. The clock read 6:30 p.m. Parker sighed and began changing into his one decent suit, navy blue, slightly too tight in the shoulders, but the best he could do on a graphic designer's salary. His phone buzzed again. A private message from his cousin Madison, the only family member he actually liked. Heads up, you're seated at table 19. With the divorced caterer and grandma's caregiver. Parker replied, at least I got a table this time. Remember when they put me at the check-in desk at Thanksgiving? Madison, that was rough. Meet me at the bar before dinner. I'll need reinforcements. Parker smiled for the first time since landing in Arizona. At least he'd have one ally in the lion's den. The Canyon Ballroom turned out to be an opulent space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the desert landscape. Parker paused at the entrance, scanning the room for Madison, when a wedding planner intercepted him. Name, she asked, clipboard in hand. Parker Donahue. She ran her finger down the list, then up, then down again, her brow furrowing. Donahue. Donahue. Oh. Here you are, at the bottom. Table 19. Parker leaned over to glimpse the seating chart and saw his name, literally written in pencil, while everyone else's was printed in elegant calligraphy. Was there some kind of mistake, he asked, already knowing the answer. The planner glanced around nervously. I don't think so. Your table is, well, it's through those doors, in the Canyon anteroom. The anteroom, Parker repeated. So, not actually in the ballroom. It's adjacent, she offered weakly. There's a nice view of the kitchen entrance. Parker pinched the bridge of his nose. Right. Of course. Wouldn't want to miss the parade of entrees. He was about to head for the bar when a familiar voice called his name. Aunt Linda, the architect of family gatherings and self-appointed guardian of Donahue traditions, was bearing down on him like a cruise ship with faulty brakes. Parker. You made it. She air-kissed both his cheeks with the precision of someone defusing a bomb. Don't you look nice? The slight pause before nice suggested his suit had been thoroughly assessed and found wanting. Thanks, Aunt Linda. The resort is beautiful. Isn't it just perfect? The Prescotts are members, of course. Charles plays golf with the owner. She lowered her voice. We were lucky to get in at all during high season. Parker nodded, as if he too understood the struggles of leveraging one's country club connections. How's your little computer job? She asked, her head tilted in what she probably thought was encouraging interest. Graphic design, Parker corrected for what felt like the 1000th time. It's going well. I just finished a campaign for. That's nice, dear, Linda interrupted, already scanning the room over his shoulder. Oh. There's Senator Mitchell. We simply must say hello. You don't mind, do you? Without waiting for an answer, she patted his arm and sailed away, leaving Parker standing alone at the entrance. And that, he muttered to himself, is the Donahue family experience in a nutshell. Chapter 3. Table 19 was exactly as promised, a small round table tucked into the anteroom, which was clearly a repurposed storage space with hastily added decorations. Parker's dining companions included Henrietta, his grandmother's aide who spoke limited English, Jorge, the divorced caterer, who, it turned out, wasn't divorced but had catered a divorce party once, and the resort's lifeguard, who had apparently been invited after saving Peyton from a mild leg cramp during a pre-wedding swim. So, Parker said, trying to make conversation as they all stared at their bread plates, how does everyone know the happy couple? Blank stares all around. I saved from water, offered the lifeguard, Boris, in a thick Eastern European accent. Leg problem. Very dramatic. I am only here because your grandmother needs medications at 9, Henrietta explained pragmatically. They said I should eat. Jorge, at least, seemed upbeat. I'm actually working tomorrow's wedding, but Miss Donahue said I could attend tonight since we had the same conversation 3 times about the canapes. I think she felt bad. Parker nodded, suddenly feeling like the most connected person at the table. Well, I'm Parker. Peyton's cousin. We grew up together. Ah. Jorge brightened. You must be close. We're related, Parker replied diplomatically. The conversation was interrupted by the clanging of a fork against crystal. In the main ballroom, Uncle Robert was making a toast, his voice barely audible from their exile. Parker craned his neck to see through the doors, catching glimpses of the real party, glittering dresses, champagne flutes raised high, and at the center of it all, Peyton. His cousin looked every inch the bride-to-be in a blush designer dress, her California blonde hair cascading over tanned shoulders. Beside her, fiancé Trent stood with the confident posture of someone who'd never had to check his bank balance before making a purchase. And we couldn't be prouder to welcome Trent into our family, Uncle Robert was saying, his voice carrying just enough for Parker to hear. The Donahues and Prescotts, two great families united. Cheers erupted from the ballroom. At table 19, Boris tried to join in but trailed off awkwardly when no one else participated. Should we toast? Asked Jorge, raising his water glass uncertainly. Parker sighed and lifted his glass. To being at the kids' table when you're 32. His phone buzzed with a text from Madison. Where are you? I'm at the bar. Anteroom. Table 19. Send supplies. 3 minutes later, Madison appeared at the doorway, a vision in emerald green with 2 smuggled glasses of champagne. At 29, she was the family rebel, having abandoned a promising law career to start a sustainable clothing line in Portland. Well, this is cozy, she said, sliding one glass toward Parker and pulling up a chair. Like a secret clubhouse, if the club was people Peyton wants to hide. You're supposed to be at table 1, Parker pointed out, gratefully accepting the champagne. Madison shrugged. Boring. Mom's been showing everyone the same photo of Peyton's engagement ring for 20 minutes. I'd rather hang with the cool kids. She turned to the others at the table. I'm Madison, by the way. The other disappointment in the family. Boris looked confused. You are, drowning victim? Metaphorically, yes, Madison replied without missing a beat. Parker, I need to show you something. She pulled out her phone and opened Instagram, revealing a series of private messages from Trent to a woman definitely not Peyton. Parker's eyes widened. When were these sent? Last week, Madison whispered. My friend Zoe works with the girl. Apparently, Trent's been networking with her for months. Does Peyton know? Madison shook her head. No one does. Except us now. Parker stared at the messages, feeling a familiar conflict rising in his chest. On one hand, Peyton had never been particularly kind to him. On the other hand, family was family, even if they relegated you to the kitchen-adjacent seating. What are you going to do? He asked. Madison bit her lip. I don't know. That's why I'm showing you. You always know what to do in these situations. I do? Yeah. You're the moral compass. I'm the chaos agent. She grinned. It's why we get along. Before Parker could respond, the doors to the main ballroom swung open, and Aunt Linda appeared, her smile tightening when she spotted Madison. There you are. Everyone's looking for you. The family photo is happening in 5 minutes. Her gaze swept over table 19 with the briefest acknowledgement. Parker, you too, I suppose. Though maybe stand toward the back. Your suit is, well, we'll make it work. As they followed Linda back to the ballroom, Madison whispered, see what I mean? Moral compass. You didn't even tell her to go to hell. Parker smiled wryly. The night is young. Chapter 4. The family photo was a carefully orchestrated display of Donahue hierarchy. Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda stood center, with Peyton and Trent directly in front of them. The rest of the family arranged in concentric circles of importance, Madison reluctantly placed next to her stepfather, and Parker, as predicted, relegated to the back row, half hidden behind Great-Uncle Frank's substantial frame. Parker, could you step back a bit more? The photographer called out. We're getting some glare from is that a clip-on tie? It is not, Parker replied indignantly, though in fact it was. Maybe just duck down a little. Perfect. Now no one can see you. Madison caught his eye and made a gagging gesture behind her mother's back. Parker suppressed a laugh, which unfortunately coincided with the camera flash, immortalizing him with what appeared to be a pained grimace in the official family photo. After the photos, Parker escaped to the terrace, needing a moment away from the Donahue vortex. The desert night was cool and clear, stars scattered above the silhouettes of saguaro cacti. There's something, aren't they? Parker turned to find an older woman he didn't recognize leaning against the railing, a glass of scotch in her hand. She had striking silver hair cut in a sharp bob and wore a pantsuit that probably cost more than Parker's monthly rent. The stars, he asked. The Donahues, she clarified with a slight smile. Like watching a live theater production where everyone's forgotten their acting. Parker hesitated, unsure if this was a trap. I'm actually a Donahue. No, you're not, she said confidently. At least, not like them. I've been watching you all evening. You look like a man attending his own execution. Despite himself, Parker laughed. That obvious, huh? I'm Celeste, she said, extending her hand. Trent's mother. Parker shook her hand, suddenly alert. Parker. Peyton's cousin. Ah, the graphic designer from Chicago. The one Linda mentioned shouldn't be seated near anyone who might need a +1 to future events. Parker winced. She said that? Not in those exact words. There was something about unstable employment and that incident at Christmas 2018. I knocked over one Christmas tree. And only because Uncle Robert's dog was chasing me after I stepped on its tail. Celeste laughed, a genuine sound that made her seem younger. Well, for what it's worth, I find the Prescotts equally exhausting. All that talk of stock portfolios and vacation homes. As if anyone actually enjoys street barts in August. You don't seem thrilled about this wedding, Parker observed carefully. Celeste swirled her scotch. Let's just say I have my concerns about compatibility. Trent has always been easily influenced. And your cousin is nothing if not influential. Parker thought about the Instagram messages on Madison's phone. Mrs. Prescott. Celeste, please. Celeste. If you knew something about Trent, something that might affect Peyton's decision to marry him, would you tell her? Celeste studied him with new interest. That depends. Is this hypothetical knowledge something that would hurt her now or save her from greater hurt later? Before Parker could respond, the terrace doors opened, and Trent himself stepped out, his perfect smile faltering slightly at the sight of them together. Mom. There you are. Dad's looking for you. His gaze shifted to Parker with a vague lack of recognition. Hey, man. You're, Parker, Celeste supplied. Peyton's cousin. The graphic designer. Right. The one with the Christmas tree thing. Classic. Trent laughed as if they were sharing an inside joke. Anyway, Mom, Dad needs you for some donor thing. Senator Mitchell wants to discuss that foundation board position. Celeste sighed and finished her scotch in one elegant swallow. Duty calls. Parker, it was a pleasure. I hope we can continue our conversation, soon. As she walked away, Trent lingered, suddenly awkward without his entourage. So, Chicago, huh? That's cold, right? Generally in winter, yes, Parker replied dryly. Cool, cool. Trent nodded, then abruptly asked, You're close with Madison, right? Parker's guard went up immediately. We're friendly. Has she, said anything about me? To you or anyone else? And there it was, the nervousness behind the perfect veneered smile. Trent knew Madison had dirt on him. Nothing specific, Parker said carefully. Should she have? Trent's relief was palpable. No. No, of course not. Just, wanted to make sure I'm making a good impression on all the cousins. Family's important to Peyton. Some family, Parker couldn't help adding. The comment went right over Trent's expensively coiffed head. Exactly. Well, I should get back. Peyton gets weird if I'm gone too long. Says I get into trouble. He laughed again, hollowly this time. Parker watched him go, a plan beginning to form in his mind. Madison was right, he usually did know what to do in these situations. The question was whether he had the courage to actually do it. Chapter 5. The next morning, Parker woke to the sound of his phone buzzing incessantly. 3 missed calls from Madison and a string of increasingly frantic texts. Emergency. Breakfast Terrace. Now. Where are you? Code red. Peyton on warpath. Involves you somehow. Groaning, Parker rolled out of bed, threw on wrinkled khakis and a polo shirt, and sprinted across the resort grounds to the breakfast terrace. He arrived sweaty and disheveled to find most of the family already assembled around a lavish buffet spread. All conversation stopped when he appeared. 20 pairs of Donahue eyes, and assorted Prescott ones, swiveled toward him with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Madison materialized at his side, coffee in hand. Where have you been? She hissed. It's past 10. Some of us weren't invited to the presidential suite with the blackout curtains, he whispered back. What's going on? Before Madison could answer, Peyton stood up, all 5'4" of her vibrating with barely contained fury. Well, she said, her voice carrying across the terrace. Look who finally decided to join us. Parker raised a hand in an awkward wave. Morning, everyone. Sorry I'm late. Oh, you're sorry. Peyton's laugh held no humor. That's rich, considering what you've done. Parker felt a cold trickle of dread. What exactly have I done? Aunt Linda stepped forward, her usually perfectly arranged features twisted with disappointment. Parker, how could you? After everything we've done for you. Which is what, exactly? Parker couldn't help asking. Put me at table 19? Seat me behind Great-Uncle Frank, who kept backing up into me because he forgot I was there. This isn't about seating arrangements. Peyton snapped. This is about you telling horrible lies about Trent to his mother. Parker's eyes widened. I didn't. Celeste came to me this morning, Peyton continued, her voice rising. Asked if I was absolutely sure about marrying her son. Said a reliable source told her Trent might be communicating with other women. All eyes swung to Trent, who had suddenly developed an intense interest in his Eggs Benedict. I never told Celeste anything specific, Parker protested, which was technically true. We just had a conversation. A conversation, Peyton repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. About what? How you've always been jealous of me. How you'll do anything to ruin my special day. Madison stepped forward. Peyton, that's not fair. Parker wouldn't. Stay out of this, Madison. Aunt Linda interjected. We all know you two have always ganged up against Peyton. Uncle Robert cleared his throat, assuming his patriarch voice. Now, let's all calm down. Peyton, honey, I'm sure Parker didn't mean any harm. Didn't mean any harm? Peyton's voice rose to a pitch that threatened nearby glassware. He tried to convince Trent's mother that her son is cheating on me. All eyes swung to Parker, who felt his face heating up. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He looked to Madison for support, but she seemed as confused as he was. I think, Parker said slowly, that there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Peyton shot back, is me thinking you could ever be happy for me. You've always been like this, showing up to family events just to make everything about you. Something inside Parker snapped. Years of slights, of being the family afterthought, of biting his tongue for the sake of peace, all of it crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. Make everything about me, he repeated incredulously. Are you serious? I've spent my entire life being treated like an unwelcome houseguest in this family. You put me at a table in a storage closet with people who don't even know who you are. The terrace went silent. Even the resort staff froze mid-mimosa pour. I didn't tell Celeste anything, Parker continued, his voice steadier now. But since we're on the subject, Trent, why don't you tell Peyton about your Instagram conversations with Zoe Fletcher? Trent's face went from golden tan to ashen in seconds. I don't know what you're talking about. Madison stepped forward, phone in hand. I think you do. And I have screenshots. Chaos erupted. Peyton lunged for Madison's phone. Aunt Linda started wailing about family loyalty. Uncle Robert tried unsuccessfully to restore order. The Prescotts huddled together like penguins in a storm. In the midst of it all, Parker felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find Celeste standing there, looking oddly serene amid the pandemonium. I think, she said calmly, we should talk. Chapter 6. Celeste led Parker to a quiet corner of the resort garden, away from the breakfast battleground. The sound of Peyton's increasingly shrill accusations faded as they walked deeper among the desert plants. I owe you an apology, Celeste said once they were alone. I may have implied that you were my source about Trent's extracurricular activities. Parker stared at her. Why would you do that? Celeste sighed, settling onto a stone bench. Because I've suspected for some time that my son isn't ready for marriage. Particularly not to someone like your cousin. But if I said anything directly, I'd be the villain, the interfering mother-in-law. I needed corroboration from someone in Peyton's circle. So you threw me under the bus, Parker said flatly. I leveraged an existing family dynamic, Celeste corrected with a hint of a smile. One that you and I both know long predates this wedding. Parker couldn't argue with that. But why me specifically? Because you're the only one who sees them clearly. The rest are either too invested in the Donahue mythology or too afraid to challenge it. She paused, studying him. And because you remind me of myself at your age. The family outlier. The one who asks inconvenient questions. Parker wasn't sure if he should be flattered or terrified. What happens now? Peyton already thinks I tried to sabotage her wedding. She thought that before you even arrived, Celeste pointed out. The only difference is now you've actually done something worth being accused of. A laugh escaped Parker before he could stop it. That's oddly comforting. Celeste stood, brushing invisible dust from her immaculate slacks. The question is, what do you want to happen now? Do you want to go back there and clear your name? Try to explain that you were just looking out for Peyton? Or. Her eyes gleamed with something Parker recognized, the look of someone who had played by other people's rules for too long. Or do we let this little drama play out? See what truths might surface when everyone is too busy pointing fingers to maintain their carefully constructed facades? Parker thought about it. About the years of being the family afterthought. About the genuine concern he'd felt when Madison showed him those messages. About how, deep down, he still cared what happened to his family, even if they didn't feel the same. I think, he said slowly, I need to talk to Madison first. Celeste nodded approvingly. A good decision. I'll head back and maintain the situation. As she walked away, Parker called after her, what exactly does that mean? She turned, that enigmatic smile playing on her lips again. It means I'm going to do what Prescotts do best, write checks and create distractions. Chapter 7. Parker found Madison hiding in the resort gift shop, pretending to be deeply interested in turquoise jewelry. There you are, she exclaimed when she spotted him. What the hell happened? 1 minute we're exposing Trent, the next you're being accused of some conspiracy with his mother? Parker quickly filled her in on his conversation with Celeste. Madison whistled low. Damn. Old lady's playing 4D chess while the rest of us are playing checkers. The question is, what do we do now? Parker asked. Peyton's furious, Trent's exposed, and somehow I'm still the villain. Madison shrugged. Same as always? Keep our heads down, avoid the drama, escape as soon as possible? But Parker shook his head. No. I'm tired of that. Tired of always being the one who has to compromise, who has to accept being treated like an afterthought. So what then? Storm back in there and demand respect? Because I gotta tell you, cuz, that's not how the Donahues operate. Maybe it's time they learned, Parker said with newfound determination. Look, I didn't come here to ruin Peyton's wedding. But I also didn't come here to be treated like I don't matter. Madison studied him, a slow smile spreading across her face. Well, look who finally grew a backbone. I've always had a backbone, Parker protested. I just kept it flexible. For the sake of peace. And how's that working out for you? About as well as your strategy of open rebellion and Portland exile. They looked at each other and burst out laughing, the tension of the morning finally breaking. So what's the plan? Madison asked, linking her arm through his. Because if we're going to commit to this family confrontation thing, I need details. Preferably with a dramatic exit strategy. Parker thought about it. About Celeste's offer to maintain the situation. About the years of silence he'd maintained in the face of slights both petty and profound. About the genuine care he still felt for his family, despite everything. I think, he said slowly, we need to go back there and tell the truth. All of it. Madison raised an eyebrow. All of it? Even the part where Aunt Linda once forgot to include you in the family Christmas card even though you were literally standing next to her in the photo? Especially that part, Parker said with a grim smile. It's time for a little family therapy, Donahue style. They walked back toward the terrace, where the family drama was still unfolding in spectacular fashion. As they approached, Parker could see Peyton in tears, Trent looking simultaneously defensive and guilty, and the two sets of parents forming battle lines. Just as they reached the entrance, Parker felt his phone buzz. A text from Celeste, whatever you're planning, wait 5 minutes. Trust me. He showed Madison, who looked intrigued. What do you think she's up to? They got their answer moments later when a resort staff member approached the terrace with an urgent message for Trent, who excused himself looking relieved at the interruption. What now? Madison muttered as they watched from a distance. I have no idea, but Celeste said to wait, so. They didn't have to wait long. Less than 3 minutes later, a commotion erupted from the direction of the resort lobby. Raised voices, the sound of something crashing, and then, to Parker and Madison's utter astonishment, the sight of Trent being forcibly escorted through the lobby by resort security, a young woman in a cocktail dress shouting after him. Is that, Madison squinted. Zoe Fletcher, Parker confirmed in disbelief. The Instagram girl. Holy shit, Madison breathed. How did she even get here? We're in Arizona. As if on cue, Celeste materialized beside them, looking supremely satisfied. First-class tickets from Chicago are surprisingly affordable when you have the right motivation. Parker stared at her. You flew Zoe out here? Just to expose Trent? Not exactly, Celeste replied calmly. I simply mentioned to her that her special friend was getting married this weekend and gave her the resort information. What she chose to do with that information was entirely her decision. That's diabolical, Madison said with undisguised admiration. That's parenthood, Celeste corrected. Sometimes you have to let your children make their own mistakes. Other times, you have to make sure those mistakes happen in public, with witnesses, before they make even bigger ones. They watched as the Donahue-Prescott wedding party collectively migrated to the lobby, drawn by the spectacle. Peyton's wails could be heard even from a distance. Shouldn't you be over there? Parker asked Celeste. That's your son. In about 30 seconds, that's going to be my ex-future daughter-in-law having a very public meltdown, my humiliated husband trying to bribe security, and my son finally facing consequences for a change. Celeste looked serene. I think I'm exactly where I need to be. Madison laughed in disbelief. You planned all this. Let's say I created optimal conditions for truth to emerge naturally. Parker shook his head, torn between shock and reluctant admiration. Why involve me at all? Why not just bring Zoe here from the beginning? Celeste turned to him, her expression softening slightly. Because you deserved a chance to stand up for yourself, Parker. To be seen by your family. I just accelerated the timeline. Before Parker could respond, Aunt Linda spotted them and came charging over, her face a mask of fury and mascara. You, she pointed at Parker. This is all your fault. If you hadn't stirred up trouble. Linda, Celeste interrupted smoothly. Your nephew didn't cause this situation. Your future son-in-law's inability to stay faithful before he's even married caused this situation. How dare you? Linda sputtered. Your son is a mess, Celeste finished for her. Trust me, I'm well aware. That's why I came to talk to Peyton this morning, to give her a chance to reconsider before the circus arrived. But instead of asking questions, she chose to shoot the messenger. Linda turned to Parker, her expression venomous. And you? Conspiring with her behind our backs. Something in Parker finally, irrevocably snapped. Enough, he said, his voice quiet but firm. I've spent my entire life trying to earn a place in this family. Being grateful for scraps of attention, for afterthought invitations, for being seated in hallways and behind Christmas trees and photos. He took a step toward his aunt. I didn't conspire with anyone. I saw evidence that Trent was cheating on Peyton, and I was trying to figure out the right thing to do. Because despite how you've treated me, I still care what happens to this family. Linda's mouth opened and closed, but for once, no words came out. Madison stepped up beside him. He's right, Mom. We've all enabled this toxic dynamic for too long. Peyton gets whatever she wants, everyone else gets what's left, and Parker gets, well, table 19. That's not true, Linda protested weakly. We've always treated everyone the same. Parker actually laughed. Aunt Linda, you put me in a room by the staff break area. You seated me at a table with people who don't even know Peyton. You've forgotten my birthday 3 years in a row. You introduced me to Senator Mitchell as Peyton's cousin who does something with computers. If that's treating everyone the same, I'd hate to see what discrimination looks like. Linda's face flushed red. You've always been difficult, Parker. Always making everything about you. That's enough, Linda, came a firm voice from behind them. Uncle Robert had approached, looking uncharacteristically serious. The boy has a point. A stunned silence fell over the group. Uncle Robert acknowledging any criticism was unprecedented in Donahue family history. Robert? Linda gasped. You can't possibly. I said enough. Robert turned to Parker, his expression softening slightly. You're right. We haven't been fair to you. I suppose it was easier to keep doing what we've always done than to admit we were wrong. Parker was speechless. Of all the scenarios he'd imagined for this confrontation, Uncle Robert taking his side hadn't been one of them. Well, Celeste said into the silence, looking pleased, this is becoming more interesting than I anticipated. Robert shot her a look. Don't think I don't recognize your handiwork in all this, Celeste. The Prescotts have always had a flair for the dramatic. Celeste merely shrugged, unrepentant. The commotion from the lobby was growing louder. Through the glass doors, they could see Peyton in full meltdown mode, mascara streaking down her face as she shouted at a stone-faced Trent. I should. Linda began, glancing anxiously toward her daughter. Let her handle it, Robert said firmly. Peyton's 28 years old. Maybe it's time she fought her own battles. Linda looked torn, years of maternal instinct warring with her husband's rare display of authority. Madison whispered to Parker, I think the universe is imploding. Dad's making sense. Parker nodded, still trying to process this unexpected turn of events. What happens now? Now, said Celeste, checking her watch, I believe we have a wedding to cancel. Unless Peyton has suddenly developed a taste for sharing her husband. As if on cue, a shrill voice cut through the air, wedding off. The wedding is off. They all turned to see Peyton storming through the lobby toward them, her perfect blowout now resembling a bird's nest, her designer dress stained with what looked suspiciously like mimosa. Mom. Dad, she wailed upon seeing them. Words failed her, and she dissolved into dramatic sobs. Linda immediately enveloped her in a hug, her maternal instincts overriding everything else. There, sweetie. We'll fix this. Fix it? Peyton pulled back, incredulous. He's been sexting half of Chicago. The wedding is canceled. Robert cleared his throat. Now, princess, let's not be hasty. Oh my God, Dad. Peyton exploded. For once in your life, can you please not try to smooth everything over? This isn't a business deal gone wrong. This is my life. Parker exchanged glances with Madison. They'd never heard Peyton speak to their uncle like that before. I think, Celeste interjected smoothly, this might be a good time for the Prescotts to gracefully exit. We'll handle the cancellation costs, of course. She handed Linda a business card. My attorney's information. He'll be in touch about the financial arrangements. Linda took the card automatically, too stunned by the rapid implosion of her carefully planned wedding to protest. As Celeste turned to leave, she paused by Parker. Remember what I said. Sometimes the family outlier is the only one who sees things clearly. She offered her hand. It was a pleasure, Parker Donahue. I have a feeling we'll meet again. Parker shook her hand, still struggling to catch up with everything that had happened. Thank you. I think. Don't thank me, Celeste replied with a wink. I'm just a catalyst. What happens next is entirely up to you. With that enigmatic statement, she glided away to collect her husband and disgraced son, leaving the Donahues to their family crisis. Epilogue. 3 months later, Parker sat in his favorite Chicago coffee shop, putting the finishing touches on a new logo design. His phone buzzed with a text from Madison. Just got the family Christmas invitation. You'll never believe this, you're listed as Parker Donahue, founder of Catalyst Design. Complete with your correct address and everything. Parker smiled. After the wedding something had shifted in the Donahue family dynamic. Aunt Linda had called him, actually called, not texted, to apologize. Uncle Robert had recommended him to a golf buddy who needed branding work, which had led to Parker landing his biggest client yet and finally launching his own design firm. Even Peyton had sent a grudging thank you note, if you hadn't exposed Trent, I would have married that cheating jerk. So, thanks, I guess. His phone buzzed again. A new email from ap.prescott@prescottfoundation.org. Curious, he opened it. Parker. I hope this finds you well. I've been following your new venture with interest. The Prescott Foundation is looking to rebrand our annual charity gala, and I immediately thought of you. The budget is enclosed. Consider it a thank you for your part in saving my son from a disastrous marriage, even if he doesn't appreciate it yet. If you're interested, I know a certain hotel in Phoenix that's offering us a substantial discount for our next event. Something about compensating for a recent disruption. Table 19 will not be involved, I promise. Warmly, Celeste Prescott Chair, Prescott Foundation. Parker laughed out loud, drawing curious glances from nearby tables. He quickly typed a reply. Celeste. I'd be delighted to discuss the rebrand. Though I should warn you, my rates have gone up since I started my own firm. As for Phoenix, I might be persuaded, as long as I'm guaranteed a room with a view that isn't of the staff smoking area. Looking forward to catching up, Parker Donahue, founder, Catalyst Design. He added founder to his signature with a small thrill of satisfaction. As he sent the email, Parker reflected on how much had changed since that disastrous wedding weekend. He'd gone from being the placeholder cousin to building something of his own, something that even the Donahues had to acknowledge. His phone rang. Madison. Did you see it? She asked without preamble. The Christmas invitation? I did. Quite the promotion from Parker, who does computer things. Mom's in full damage control mode. She's telling everyone she always knew you were destined for great things. Parker snorted. Of course she is. So, Madison continued, are you coming? To Christmas? Parker considered the question. The old Parker would have made an excuse, avoided the potential for disappointment. But the new Parker, the one who'd stood up for himself, who'd launched his own business, who'd discovered he didn't need the Donahue's approval to succeed, that Parker had a different answer. Actually, yes. I think I will. But this time, I'm bringing Terry. Madison gasped in mock horror. Your roommate who rearranges the cereal boxes. Aunt Linda will have an aneurysm. Exactly, Parker replied with a grin. Consider it my Christmas gift to the family. As he hung up, Parker glanced at his inbox, now containing potential client work worth more than he'd made all of last year. The coffee shop window reflected his image, still the same Parker, but somehow different. More solid. Less apologetic for the space he occupied in the world. He'd spent his whole life being the placeholder cousin, the family afterthought. But as it turned out, the real placeholder had been the version of himself he'd allowed his family to see, the diminished, apologetic Parker who was always grateful for scraps of attention. That placeholder was gone now. And the real Parker Donahue was just getting started. The end.